Hello, and welcome to Mythic Mundi. Ours is a world built on stories. But every so often, a story emerges from the mists of history that defies logic, challenges belief, and reshapes the world forever. It's a story so improbable, it feels more like myth than reality. Today, we explore the most improbable of them all. Imagine a kingdom, broken and bleeding, torn apart by a century of war. Its armies are defeated, its people are in despair, and its king has not even been crowned, hiding in shame as enemies occupy his land. The situation is hopeless. Now imagine a figure emerging from this darkness. Not a powerful duke, or a hardened general, or a cunning politician, but a 17-year-old girl. A peasant, unable to read or write, from a tiny, forgotten village. She claims she hears the voice of God. She claims she has been given an impossible mission to defeat the most powerful army in Europe, to see the rightful king crowned, and to save France. And then she does it. This is the story of Joan of Arc. A tale of staggering faith, political intrigue, and a legacy that transcends history. How did a shepherdess from nowhere become a military commander, a kingmaker, and ultimately a saint? This is the story of the maiden who became a myth. To understand the miracle of Joan, we must first understand the despair of the world that summoned her. The year is 1422. France is not a country, it is a battlefield. The conflict we call the 100 Years' War had been raging for generations. It was a brutal, dynastic struggle between the royal houses of England and France for the French throne. But by Joan's time, it was far more than that. It was a vicious civil war. France was split in two. In the north, the English held vast territories, including Paris itself. They were allied with the powerful Burgundians, a French faction who sought to control the throne for themselves. In the south, what remained of the French crown belonged to one man, the Dauphin, Charles. Dauphin was the title for the heir, but Charles was an heir with nothing to inherit. He was uncrowned, weak-willed, and haunted by rumors of his own illegitimacy. His court at Chinon was a nest of paranoia and defeat. France, it seemed, was days away from ceasing to exist. This was the world Joan of Arc was born into, around 1412, in the small village of Domremy. Domremy was on the very edge of French territory, surrounded by hostile Burgundian lands. Joan's childhood was not peaceful. She witnessed raids. She saw her village burned. She understood, in a way city dwellers could not, the immediate, terrifying reality of the war. By all accounts, she was a normal child, but exceptionally pious. She loved the sound of the church bells, she prayed often, and she was known for her kindness and devotion. She was a farmer's daughter, destined for a simple life of labor and marriage. Then, when she was 13, everything changed. She was in her father's garden. Suddenly, she described a brilliant light and a voice that was kind but firm. A voice, she would later claim, of Saint Michael the Archangel, the protector of France. He was soon joined by others, Saint Catherine of Alexandria and Saint Margaret of Antioch. At first, their messages were simple. They told her, "Be a good girl, go to church." But as Joan grew older, and as the war in France grew more desperate, the mission became terrifyingly clear. The voices gave her two commands. First, she must go to the nearby town of Vaucouleurs, find the loyal captain, Robert de Baudricourt, and demand he take her to the Dauphin, Charles. Second, she would lift the siege of Orléans, the last city standing between the English and total victory. And third, she would lead the Dauphin to Reims, deep in enemy territory, for his rightful coronation. Imagine the sheer impossibility of this. A teenage peasant girl with no military training, no political connections, and no money was claiming a divine mandate to take command of the armies of France. Naturally, when she first presented herself to Robert de Baudricourt in 1428, he laughed her off. He told her cousin to take her home and give her a good spanking. But Joan was not deterred. Faith, true faith, is a force of nature. It does not bend to ridicule. She returned, and she returned again. She became a local curiosity, this strange girl who spoke with such unnerving certainty. She began to win over the common soldiers. Her conviction was pure, and in an age of cynical, defeated men, that purity was magnetic. She made a prediction that the French would suffer a terrible defeat near Orléans. When news arrived weeks later of the disastrous Battle of the Herrings, her prophecy was proven true. Robert de Baudricourt, pragmatic and desperate, finally relented. Maybe she was mad, but what if she wasn't? What did they have left to lose? He gave her a horse and a small escort of soldiers. For her own protection on the 11-day journey across hostile territory, Joan cut her hair short and dressed in men's clothes. This practical decision would later become a central point in her destruction. In February 1429, after a perilous journey, Joan of Arc arrived at the court of the Dauphin in Chinon. The court was a scene of desperation. When they heard a maiden prophet was coming, many were skeptical, but Charles, ever grasping at straws, agreed to see her. He decided to test her. According to legend, the Dauphin disguised himself, hiding among his courtiers in the crowded Great Hall. Joan, who had never seen him, walked past the finely dressed lords straight to the unremarkable, disguised Charles and bowed. "God give you good life, gentle Dauphin," she said. Charles was stunned. He pointed to another man, saying he was the Dauphin. "In the name of God," she insisted, "it is you and no other." She then reportedly gave him a sign in private, a piece of knowledge so secret that only he and God could know. To this day, we do not know what she said, but whatever it was, it shattered Charles's crippling doubt. It convinced him, perhaps for the first time, that he truly was the legitimate son of the king and the rightful heir to France. This was the first miracle. It wasn't on a battlefield, it was psychological. She had not yet raised a sword, but she had already saved the king from his own despair. But belief was not enough. The court was full of scheming politicians and skeptical theologians. They were not about to hand their last army over to a teenager because of a sign. Before she could march to Orléans, she had to march to Poitiers. She was subjected to a grueling 3-week theological examination. A panel of the highest-ranking bishops and doctors of the church interrogated her. They grilled her on her faith, her visions, the nature of God. They were testing her for heresy, for witchcraft, for any sign of demonic influence. This illiterate girl was in a room full of the most educated men in the kingdom, and she dominated them. They tried to trap her with complex theology. She answered with simplicity. When asked what language her voices spoke, she replied, "A better language than yours."
When a scholar with a thick regional accent asked what signs she could show them, she said, "In God's name, I have not come to Poitiers to give signs, but take me to Orléans, and I will show you the sign for which I was sent." They pressed her. If God wanted to deliver France, why did he need soldiers? "The soldiers will battle," Joan answered, "and God will give the victory." In the end, the panel could find no fault in her, no heresy, no madness, only probity, simplicity, and humility. Their official conclusion was that given the desperate state of the kingdom, the Dauphin would be wise to not dismiss her. It was the faintest green light, but it was all Joan needed. Charles gave her a suit of white armor forged to fit her small frame. She was given a banner, not a weapon, as her primary tool. It was white, emblazoned with the images of Jesus and Mary. Her weapon was a sword she asked to be dug up from behind the altar at the church of Saint Catherine de Fierbois. It was an ancient sword, they claimed, rusted and buried, which the voices had revealed to her. The Maiden of Domremy was gone, armed with divine purpose, a suit of armor, and the desperate hopes of a dying nation. She was now Joan, the Maiden of Orléans. She rode out not just as a girl, but as a symbol. And the fate of France rode with her.
When Joan of Arc arrived at the siege of Orléans in late April 1429, the city was on its knees. For 7 months, Orléans had been surrounded by a chain of English fortresses, or bastilles. The city was the key to the Loire Valley. If it fell, the English could cross the river and sweep south, extinguishing the Dauphin's cause for good. The French commanders in the city were veterans, but they were exhausted and demoralized. They had accepted a static defense. They were simply waiting for the inevitable. Then, she arrived. Joan's arrival was a shockwave. She didn't just bring supplies, she brought an entirely new energy. It was the energy of absolute divine certainty. The battle-hardened captains, men like Dunois, the bastard of Orléans, were skeptical. They saw a 17-year-old girl in armor. They tried to manage her, to use her as a mascot, a holy good luck charm to parade before the troops while the real soldiers planned the war. They were in for a surprise. Joan was not passive. She was a torrent. She was furious at the commander's cautious plans. Her voices had not told her to negotiate. They had not told her to wait. They had told her to attack. She famously clashed with the commanders, declaring that her council, the council of her voices, was wiser than theirs. She bypassed the command structure and went straight to the people and the common soldiers. She would ride through the streets, banner in hand, urging them to pray, to confess, and to have faith. But her message was not just spiritual, it was a call to action. She was, in essence, a moral force. She famously drove out the prostitutes and camp followers from the army and demanded the soldiers stop swearing. The soldiers, who had been treated as disposable pawns by cynical nobles, adored her. She didn't talk to them like a general. She talked to them like a prophet. She represented something pure in a world that was entirely corrupt. She made them believe that God was finally, truly on their side. The French commanders, seeing the tidal wave of morale she had unleashed, had no choice but to follow her lead. The attack began. The English held a key fortress, the Bastille de Saint-Loup. The French commanders thought it was too strong. Joan led the charge, and it fell. Then they targeted the Augustine fortress. Again, it fell. The final critical objective was Les Tourelles, the main English stronghold that guarded the bridge into the city. It was considered impregnable. The French commanders argued against the attack. It was suicide. On the morning of May 7th, Joan ignored them.
She rose, positioned herself at the front of the assault, and gave the order. The battle for Les Tourelles was brutal. The French assaulted the walls for hours, being beaten back time and again. Then the moment that cemented the legend happened. Joan, urging her men forward from the front line, was struck. An English crossbow bolt pierced her shoulder, entering 6 inches, visible from front and back. She was carried from the field, bleeding and in pain. The French attack faltered. The commanders saw what they expected. The prophet was just a mortal girl, and the magic was over. They prepared to sound the retreat. But Joan was not finished. She ripped the arrow out herself. She refused the soldiers' charms or folk magic to heal the wound, instead relying only on prayer. After a short time, she rose. She grabbed her banner, returned to the front line, and told her commanders that the assault would resume. When the English soldiers on the wall saw her, the girl they had just seen taken down by a mortal wound, now back on her feet, were overcome with superstitious terror. When the French soldiers saw her, they were filled with a superhuman courage. They saw it not as resilience, but as a resurrection, a miracle. They attacked with a fervor the English had never witnessed. The fortress of Les Tourelles fell. The English defenses were shattered. The next day, May 8th, 1429, the English army abandoned the siege. They packed their supplies and marched away from Orléans. They had not been defeated by superior tactics or numbers. They had been defeated by a force they could not understand. In just over a week, a teenage girl had accomplished what the entire French army could not do in 7 months. The Maiden of Orléans had delivered her first sign. The victory at Orléans was a profound turning point. It wasn't just a strategic victory, it was a psychological one. It shattered the long-held myth of English invincibility. It proved to the French that they could win. And it proved to the world that Joan of Arc was not a mad woman. But Joan's mission was not complete. Orléans was just the beginning. The Dauphin, Charles, was still hesitant. He was comfortable in his court. Joan, however, was impatient. Her voices were urging her forward. The second task was at hand, the coronation. To get to Reims, the traditional city of coronation, they had to cross hundreds of miles of English and Burgundian-held territory. The Loire Valley was studded with English fortresses. Joan, now the de facto spiritual commander of the army, launched the Loire campaign. With her captains, she led the army in a stunning series of blitzkrieg victories. One by one, the English strongholds fell. At the Battle of Jargeau, she was at the front again, climbing a scaling ladder when a heavy stone struck her helmet, knocking her into the ditch. She arose immediately, unhurt, and shouted, "Friends, friends, on! Our Lord has condemned the English, they are ours." The fortress fell moments later. Then came the Battle of Patay. This was Joan's masterpiece. The English, famous for their longbowmen who decimated French cavalry, prepared their classic defensive position. But the French, inspired by Joan, attacked before the archers could set their stakes. It was a rout. The elite English longbow corps was shattered. The French, for the first time in a generation, had defeated the English in an open field battle. The path to Reims was now clear. On July 17, 1429, less than 3 months after she arrived at Orléans, Joan of Arc stood beside the Dauphin in Reims Cathedral as he was officially crowned King Charles VII of France. She knelt at his feet weeping. She had fulfilled her promise. The shepherdess from Domremy, guided by voices only she could hear, had restored the rightful king to his throne. In her eyes, her mission was complete. She had saved France. But history was not finished with her. The victory at Orléans was the peak of her earthly glory. From this incredible height, the world was already conspiring to bring her down. The myth was forged. Now, the martyr would be made.
After the coronation at Reims, the nature of the war changed. For Joan, the mission had always been one of divine clarity: relieve Orléans, crown the king. But for King Charles VII, the mission was now political. War is expensive. Politics is complicated. Charles, now legitimized, began to favor the slow grinding work of diplomacy and negotiation with the Duke of Burgundy. He was less interested in Joan's call for an all-out assault on Paris. Joan, the symbol of pure, uncompromising faith, suddenly found herself in a world of gray, cynical politics. She was a weapon of absolute war in a time of hesitant peace. She participated in a failed assault on Paris, where she was wounded again. The momentum was slowing. The king and his counselors began to see her less as a miracle and more as a complication. Her voices were no longer convenient. In May 1430, almost exactly a year after her great victory, Joan was at the town of Compiègne, defending it from a Burgundian siege. During a skirmish outside the city gates, she was cut off. As she tried to retreat, the city drawbridge was raised. It may have been a tragic accident of war, or it may have been a deliberate betrayal by commanders who had grown jealous or fearful of her power. She was pulled from her horse by a Burgundian archer. The Maiden of Orléans was a prisoner. She was the prisoner of the Duke of Burgundy. King Charles, the man she had placed on the throne, made no serious attempt to ransom her. It remains one of the most debated and controversial inactions in history. He had his crown, and the prophet who gave it to him was now a political liability. The Burgundians, seeing her value, entered into a different kind of negotiation. The English wanted her, but they didn't just want her dead. A simple execution would make her a martyr. They needed to destroy her. They needed to destroy the idea of her. They needed to prove that her voices were not from God, but from the devil. If she was a heretic, a witch, then her victories were demonic illusions, and Charles VII was not the rightful king, but a monarch crowned by a servant of Satan. The Burgundians sold Joan of Arc to the English for 10,000 francs. It was a political transaction. They handed her over to the pro-English church authorities in Rouen, led by a man named Bishop Pierre Cochon. The trial of Joan of Arc began in February 1431. It was not a trial. It was a theological assassination. For months, this illiterate 19-year-old girl was held in a secular military prison, chained to a block of wood and guarded by English soldiers. She was not in a gentle church prison as church law dictated. She was subjected to daily public interrogation by a panel of over 60 of the most brilliant theologians and lawyers in Europe, all of them allied with the English. The entire trial was meticulously documented, and those documents reveal something astonishing. They expected to crush a simple-minded peasant. Instead, they found themselves facing an intellect so sharp and a faith so profound that she consistently outmaneuvered them. They were educated men, masters of logic. She was an uneducated girl, a master of truth. They tried to trap her on the nature of her visions. Was St. Michael clothed? Do you think God has not the wherewithal to clothe him? She retorted. They tried to trap her on her sign to the king, desperate to know what she had said. She refused, stating it was between her, her king, and God. They asked her if she believed she was in a state of God's grace. This was a famous theological trap.
If she said yes, she was guilty of presumption, as no one can truly know. If she said no, she admitted she was in a state of sin. Joan's answer stunned the entire court. "If I am not," she said, "may God put me there. And if I am, may God so keep me." The chief examiner was so floored by the perfection of her answer that he ended the day's session immediately. But this trial was never about justice. It was about finding a single crack. They couldn't break her on theology, so they focused on the one crime they could see: her clothing. She wore men's clothes. To the church, this was an abomination, a violation of divine law. To Joan, it was a practical necessity. It protected her in camp and in her prison, where she was guarded by male soldiers. Her voices, she said, had not forbidden it.
After months of this psychological torment, exhausted, sick, and threatened with torture, Joan finally faltered. On May 24th, she was taken to a scaffold in the cemetery of Saint-Ouen. A sermon was read, condemning her, and the executioner stood ready. They presented her with a document of abjuration, a confession of her sins, admitting her voices were false and agreeing to wear women's clothing. If she signed, she would be spared the fire and sentenced to life in prison. She signed. We don't even know if she understood what the French documents said. She was a survivor. She chose life. But it was a trap. Days later, the court discovered she had relapsed. She was found once again in men's clothing. Why? The historical record is debated. Some say her female clothes were taken from her by her guards, leaving her no choice. Others say she put them back on in a final act of defiance, realizing that a life in prison without her voices was a fate worse than death, that she had betrayed her God and would not do it again. Whatever the reason, the relapse was all Bishop Cauchon needed. It proved she was an unrepentant heretic. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. On May 30th, 1431, Joan of Arc was taken to the old market square in Rouen. She was 19 years old. She asked for a cross. An English soldier, moved to pity, hastily tied 2 sticks together and gave it to her. She kissed it and tucked it into her dress. She asked that a crucifix from the nearby church be held high so she could see it as she died. As the pyre was lit, she cried out for her saints. Her final shouted word, heard above the roar of the flames, was, "Jesus!" The crowd and even her executioners were undone. A secretary to the King of England lamented, "We are all lost, for we have burned a saint." The English, to ensure no relics could be gathered, burned her body twice more and cast her ashes into the Seine River. They had destroyed the girl, but they had immortalized the myth. The story should have ended there, but it didn't. The war Joan started had taken on a life of its own. Her victories had given France the one thing it needed: courage. The French armies, reorganized and newly professional, pushed the English back, step by step. In 1453, the 100 Years' War ended with a total French victory. King Charles VII, now the undisputed ruler of a united France, had one last piece of business. It was inconvenient that the saint who had crowned him was still technically a condemned heretic. In 1456, he authorized a rehabilitation trial. Bishop Cauchon was now dead, and the politics had reversed. The new trial examined the old one, finding it corrupt, biased, and full of procedural errors. Joan's conviction was officially nullified. She was declared innocent. She was declared a martyr. Her legacy, however, was just beginning. For centuries, she was a symbol of French nationalism.
In the 19th century, she became a symbol for feminists, a woman who broke every gender barrier of her age. She has been a symbol for artists, writers, and filmmakers. And in 1920, the same church that had burned her officially canonized her. Joan of Arc was now Saint Joan. The peasant from Domrier, the maiden of Orléans, the witch of Rouen, the saint of France. Who was she? A simple, pious girl who was touched by the divine? A brilliant, charismatic, and perhaps mentally ill young woman who embodied the desperate hopes of her people? A political pawn who was used, celebrated, and then discarded by men of power. The mystery of Joan of Arc is that she was, perhaps, all of these things. Her story refuses a simple explanation. She remains one of history's most profound and challenging figures. A shepherdess who heard voices, commanded armies, crowned a king, and forged a nation, all before she turned 20. Her ashes were scattered, but her spirit was indestructible. She proved that the faith of a single, unknown individual can be a force powerful enough to change the course of history. A true myth forged in the fires of reality. The story of Joan of Arc is one that will be told as long as we have language to tell it. But she is not the only figure to walk the line between history and myth. What story would you like us to explore next? Whose legend deserves the Mythic Mundi treatment? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found value in our journey today, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to support the channel. It helps us continue to explore these incredible tales. Thank you for joining us on Mythic Mundi.